And that brings us to our topic today, the power of the eternal now. Our speaker is Terry Hunt, and he is a national lecturer for the Theosophical Society in America. He has taught classes in Theosophy and methods of self-transformation since 1978. And he's a student of many of the Theosophical works, especially the Philosophy of Raja Yoga and the Mahatma Letters to A.P. Sinan. In 1980 and 81, he lived and worked at the Theosophical Society in America headquarters in Wheaton, Illinois. He is the co-author of the book Ancient Wisdom for a New Age, a Practical Guide for Spiritual Growth, and we have some copies of that book here, together with his co-author, Paul Benedict. So I want to introduce you to both of them, Terry Hunt and Paul Benedict. Please give them a hand.
All right, welcome everyone. We are going to start with just a couple of minutes of silent meditation to kind of get all of our vibrations in harmony here. So I'll sound the gong a couple of times, just a minute or two of silent meditation, and at the end we'll all chant Om together on the same note, hopefully. Welcome everyone to Larry. This is someone I know. Come on in. Welcome. Can somebody tell me what time it is?
3:05.
3:05, yeah.
It's now.
That was a trick question. What time is it?
Now.
Now. He had pre-warning. All right. We're talking about the power of the eternal now today. It's a powerful topic, and it has been a topic that has captured people's imaginations for several decades. many of the spiritual teachers have talked about this idea of an eternal now. One of the advanced teachers 130 some years ago said, there is nothing but the eternal now. That's all we have. Sounds a little depressing, doesn't it? But we're going to explore this concept of the eternal now and just what they mean, what is the meaning of the eternal now? Why is there only now? Why is there no past? Why is there no future? I know people who say, well, without the past, I would be no one. I'm someone because of my past. But we'll see whether that's true or not. I'm saying that it makes no difference. If the past doesn't even exist, you still are someone, and you're someone who has certain characteristics and certain abilities and certain life experience, and that will never disappear, ever. But what you don't have is a past that is reliable. We're going to talk about this idea of past. To begin with, let's cover, I want you to imagine something. Imagine that instead of being born in a hospital or in a house somewhere, that you were born in a cave. You were born in a cave. There are other people who live in this cave, but they were born in the cave too. So they know nothing but this cave. So what kind of conditions do we have? There's no light other than they have figured out some way to create light whenever they need light. But there's no daylight, there's no nighttime. There are no seasons. Because you're in the ground, there's no variation of temperature. How do you determine time? Have you ever thought about that? Do you ever lay awake at night and wonder about these things?
Not till now.
All the time.
I check my watch.
But there's no watches in this cave. No one ever thought to invent a watch. There are no calendars. There's no TV even. It's not even the internet. So how in the world do you know what time it is?
There is no
People
time.
go to
It's irrelevant.
sleep.
There is no time, and that's the point. That's the point. If in fact you were born and always lived in, come on in, and lived in this cave, you would have no point of reference of time except you would have periods of being awake and of being asleep. Is that correct? Either you are awake right now, and if you're asleep, you're not even aware of anything. You may be dreaming, but is there any sense of time? Even now, when you dream, do you think, oh, it's 3 a.m. right now? Ever? No, me either. I never worry about the time. I don't even know the time exists when I'm dreaming. I love thinking about this stuff, but because it stirs up all kinds of questions, and it actually brings a couple of answers once in a while. So what is this concept of time then? When in the cave, obviously, there is no time. You can talk about something happened in the past. You may have been bitten by a poisonous snake or something, and your memory says, hey, remember that time? We say time at that time. Because remember, it seems like there was some kind of a creature that bit me. How long ago? There's no reference. You couldn't say it was 3 weeks ago, it was a year ago. There's no reference in the past. That's all you have. Past, somewhere in the past. And if your memory is somewhat astute, you might actually be able to remember sequences of events. Okay, this happened before or after that event. But that's really the extent of it, isn't it? You can say something happened, when, how long ago? I don't know, but it happened before that event. How long did that happen? I have no idea. This is important to think about these things. So in the cave, no reference of time whatsoever. None. So how did our idea of time come about? Why do we even have this concept of passage of time? Any ideas?
Revolution around the sun.
The diurnal motion of the sun. That's the only reason. It's because we have an indicator that moves, and in olden days all you knew was sunrise up till sunset, but after that you knew there was a period of time, but you couldn't really measure it as to how long that would occur. I mean, if you stayed up all night, I guess you would have an indicator, but if you fell asleep, you had no idea how long you slept. All
They
you know
probably
is,
just thought, okay, the sun's up, we have to be up, and the sun's down, now we go to sleep.
and that's exactly what happened. Life was based on the movement of the sun. People got up with the sun or slightly before, and once the sun went down, other than using a little bit of artificial light to finish up some tasks, they went to bed. So it was very simple. Life was very simple, and people were very in tune with the universe. They knew exactly what period of year it was, what time of day it was, based on the position of the sun. Our sundials were invented because of the movement of the sun. And even our watches, our clocks, are an analog representation of the movement of the sun. So even at sundown, say it's at 6 p.m., of course, our clocks do 2 revolutions for 24 hours, but it's really a circle. If you had a 24-hour clock, your sunrise would be at 0 o'clock, or whatever you choose to call it. Noon would be straight ahead. Sunset would be at 3 o'clock, and at the 6 o'clock position would actually be midnight, wouldn't it? And that's what our astrological charts are. If you know anything about astrology, it's depending on where the sun falls in your astrology chart would be on a 24-hour clock. So that's where it all comes from, the sun, the movement of the sun in the sky, in the heavens, and people's natural connection with nature. And so everything in life was based on this natural movement. But there's a secondary part of this, and what is that? Not just the diurnal motion, but what else?
Rotation of the Earth.
The inclination, well, the rotation of the Earth, but the inclination over a period of time as the Earth revolves, the inclination changes, so we have seasons, right? We have the annual cycle. So we've got 2 cycles here so far. We've got a daily cycle, and we've got an annual cycle, both caused by the sun, or by the apparent movement of the sun. From our point of view, we Earthlings like to think that the sun revolves around us. We like to think that the entire universe revolves around us.
Yes.
Don't tell anyone. Don't tell anyone. But it's the way it appears. And in the past, people actually, that was their belief, was that the entire universe revolved around the Earth, except for those people who were advanced and who knew more than the average person did. And we've had those people among us practically forever. Not forever, but for long before anyone can ever remember. We have had those teachers, advanced teachers among us, and that's one of the teachings of Theosophy, is that they have always been there, and they knew and still know things that most of us do not know and can't even imagine. So they try in their best way to teach us from time to time what they can of their understanding of their science. I call it esoteric science. And by the way, it is absolutely practical. It is absolutely logical. And it is understandable at its own level. If you can see it from the proper level of consciousness, it will make perfect sense to you. But you have to be able to achieve that in order for that to happen. That's the problem. most of our physical scientists haven't gotten there yet. And so they discount it as being useless. However, as Maury and I were discussing earlier, science is getting closer and closer to accepting some of these things. We'll mention a couple of them. And to me, it's nice to find out that they are having to admit that there are things that they cannot explain, and that they're willing now, finally, to say, you know what? It has to be this way, but there's no way we can prove it. We have no way to say that, as Einstein said, he came up with some incredible theories and some incredible explanations of time and space and many, many other things. He said, someone was asking about the importance of his discoveries, and he said, well, this is how important they are. One single experiment could prove all of it wrong. And yet there is no number of experiments that would absolutely prove it to be correct. So that's how important it is.
I mean, do we really need to know it all? I mean,
No, you don't.
And is it even possible to know it all? There's
No.
so much. So, like, scientists just need to cut themselves a break and, like, go to a point where they can say, okay,
And they're getting there. Very quickly they're realizing that their information and their understanding is limited, and that there's an unlimited amount of expansion of consciousness out there, and they're beginning to come to terms with that. They really have no choice.
well, yeah.
And that's exactly what it is. I want to very quickly introduce a concept in Theosophy. How many of you are totally new to Theosophical ideas? Nobody? A little bit? All right.
Stretching your
In the physical realm, we know basically the physical world around us. In physical science, that's basically all that they admit. They claim that thoughts originate in the human brain, and that at the end of life, that's the end of it. There's nothing else. It came about spontaneously, supposedly from some kind of a soup that was, and a spark of some sort that created, who knows. Even they have to admit that that's pretty far-fetched, that could even be the origin of life on Earth. So they don't, if they're honest, they have to admit that they really don't have a good explanation for why life exists. So they are beginning to come to terms and say, you know what, we don't have an answer for everything. So in esoteric science, and this comes, the teachings come from some of these advanced teachers. We call the next level the adepts or masters of wisdom. They are masters of our realm of human consciousness because they have reached the apex of this expansion of human consciousness to a point where they have the ability to go on to a further level of development. And as the young lady pointed out, it never ends. There is no point at which you say, I know everything there is possible to know. It never ends. Even if you're the head of a solar system, the spiritual head of a solar system does not know everything, is still learning. If we can just wrap our heads around that, then we can feel perfectly comfortable. Then there's no anxiety about, well, I've got to get here, I've got to get there, I've got to. No, there's nothing you have to do, and that's part of the power of the now. Everything is absolutely perfect right this second. Now I have people who argue violently against it. What do you mean everything is perfect? The world is in chaos, it's a mess. How can you say everything is perfect? We'll get there. But first let me...
time.
Yes, all in due time, patience. So, we are taught that there are different levels of consciousness, and each one has its own vibrational rate. Life, even the scientists have figured out only in relatively recent times that what we consider matter is really energy. Einstein came up with the conversion from matter to energy, and And with the discovery of the, what is the Higgs and boson
Oh,
particle?
the Higgs boson
Higgs.
particle.
Then now they've almost got a proof that it actually works, that there is this creative property of creating matter out of energy. We've known it all along. In fact, the ancient wisdom teachings say that you can't create more matter. There is space. Where's the end of space? There's no end to it. Even scientists they keep going farther and farther out, and they come up with these theories, but there's no end to it. There is no point where you can get to the envelope that I used to think about this when I was 11 years old, back on the ranch in Arizona. At night, I'd look up in the stars, and I'm thinking, if I went to the very edge of the universe, and there's the envelope right there, and I stick my finger through it, what's on the other side? More space. How can there be an end to space? I figured that out at 11 years old. And that's what these teachers tell us too. There is no end to space. It is infinite, it is omnipresent. And the same with matter. You can't have space without matter. What would be the connection of that? What we have to get out of our heads is this idea of physical matter. We think that everything, and even that, think about this for a second. If, according to the ideas of these ancient wisdom teachers, if in fact I am an energy field that has certain programming in me, that I believe that I am physical, and this also has certain programming that makes it believe that it's physical. I knock on it, and it's absolutely solid, isn't it? Well, number one, we know it's not solid because even science tells us that the amount of space between the nucleus and between the electrons in an atom is enormous. Like the P in the center of a football field, the entire stadium being the radius of the atom, and that tiny P being the nucleus. Everything else is empty space. So that alone tells you that it's not very solid. So what is it? This is my theory, or the way I like to explain it. It's kind of like, how many of you like to play video games, even if it's video poker? Any kind of video games, all right. But you all know, it's all based on what? Programming. If the programmer makes a mistake, then Mario, or whoever the hero is, punches out the villain, and it's not programmed properly, it'll go right through him, and the villain isn't even affected. But if it's programmed properly, when those two pixels interact, boom, there's a certain amount of force, and depending on how hard he hits him, the villain goes flying and may explode even. So it's all in programming. Our world is nothing but a video game. Don't tell anybody that. But it is absolutely a video game, and it's all based on programming. And what is the program? Natural law. It's called natural law. It's nothing but energy. It's nothing but electrons. It's nothing but, not even electrons, because electrons are a manifestation of this energy. So it's energy patterns, it's energy fields. When it all comes down to it, that's all we have at any level of manifestation is a pattern, very complicated patterns of energy fields interacting with each other. And you cannot separate any one of those out of the matrix of that energy field. Each one is inextricably connected with all of the other fields. So that's what we've got to deal with. So we call this solid, but it's not. In this world, it feels solid. Well, let me give you another example. When you're dreaming, has anybody ever dreamed that they drove a car in your dream? Of course. What do? You slam the door, you get in the car, you put your foot on the gas, and away you go. Was there anything that wasn't solid about that? It was absolutely solid, wasn't it?
Not literally in a dream, like sometimes I carry my car like.
Okay, but it's an object. But it's an object. What is it?
Somehow I get into it.
Okay. Right.
The size and it's not necessarily.
But you weren't carrying a packet of energy patterns, were you? You were carrying a car.
Oh, yeah.
And you identified it as a car.
Yeah, in the dream positive.
So in the physical world, we see a Prius and we say, oh, that's a car. It's a physical object. We see it in our dreams and we say, oh, yeah, that's a physical object. It's all illusion. Everything, all of it is illusion. Wow. So none of this is real. So now what? See, I'm taking all this stuff away from you that you thought was absolutely solid and real, and now I'm kind of shaking your foundations to see what will happen. So hopefully you won't get too upset with me.
No, I always thought it.
Okay,
There's
good.
something special about Prius hybrid and so.
There is something fishy.
So, but what I'm getting at is that I hope everyone will start being willing to look at life a little differently now. And that's how we really can stretch and make much more rapid progress than normal. People who pull in and fixate on things the way they are convinced that things are cannot grow. You've created a concrete shell around your ideas, and you're inside the shell, not outside it. You're inside it. And that's the limit of your ability to grow for the present being. Until life or something breaks that shell, you can break it yourself, you created it, and expand that to a bigger size so that you can grow. That's how we grow. So the idea is to adopt theories of how things work for the time being. Physical science, the theories of physical science worked perfectly up to a point. The Newtonian laws of physics worked absolutely perfectly for decades, and then they kind of fell apart. And it's because of our expanding consciousness and awareness. Nothing else. Nothing really changed except that we were willing to expand and change the way we looked at life now. So now those old concepts only partially work, and in a limited set of circumstances. And we have to look for something else, for a better explanation where we are right now. Later, all of this will be completely changed. We have to be willing to change. So is it meaningless if we say that all of life is an illusion? That's a good question. Is it meaningless? Absolutely not.
It can't be meaningless in the sense of if you think of it in karma and reincarnation. I mean, if we were people, I mean, based on what I read in the book, if we were people back in the past, we're the same people now. You know, we're just in a different body in a different time period, and we're still having to learn things that we need to learn as as beings.
So it comes back to what I said earlier. It's all about experience. The life experience you have, whether it is based on an illusion or not, is very real. It's real because it is meaningful for us. No one's going to say that life has no meaning whatsoever. You have to go with your intuition sometimes on these things. Life has complete meaning to it. And it's also an illusion. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. To us, it's completely real. And it's what gives us the experience that we are in need of right now. People say, well, if there's no meaning, no reason, if none of this exists, if it's only an illusion, I'll just sit out and do nothing. I tell them, well, fine. Let's see how long you can do nothing. So they sit there about 3 seconds and like, oh, okay, let's go do something. No, it's in our nature to do, to act, to experience, isn't it?
Yeah. That's what-
There's no way that you can extract yourself from that and just say, I'm not going to play anymore.
Right. It's part of it's the life.
It is life.
It's
It
life,
is life.
whether it's,
You can't choose in or out, because even after you die, you're still
you're
alive.
still living.
You're still alive. So it doesn't end ever. You can't choose out. So you may as well choose in and say, you know what? Let me see how quickly I can figure out how all of this works. And is even that meaningful? Because you can say, well, if I'm never going to reach the point where I know everything, then what difference does it make? In one sense, it makes no difference whatsoever. Here's the thing. There's a lot of people out in the world that suffer dreadfully. Pain, sorrow, loss, hardships, heartbreaks, many kinds of pain and suffering in the world. And yes, it is all illusory. And yet to them it's absolutely real. But it is not necessary if we look at it in the proper way and from the proper perspective. It all makes perfect sense, and the pain stops once that happens. So what is needed is a number of people who are wise enough and who make the effort to gain that level of comprehension to where they are able to prove it adequately to themselves that is in fact the way things are, and then to help other people. If I've been able to overcome all of the pain and sorrow and suffering that I experienced in the previous part of my life, wouldn't I want to help other people overcome that? I don't like to see people suffer, and it's not because, it's not because I need to put an end to it. It's because I feel like I can be of help. Simple as that.
Empathy,
Just
compassion.
not even empathy. It's just these are fellow human beings who simply aren't able to see clearly yet. Let me see if I can help them see a little more clearly, and that will hopefully eliminate some of this sorrow and pain in people's lives. So, one of the major teachings that we've received from these advanced masters of wisdom is the different levels of consciousness above our recognized level here of physical. And each one of these has a vibratory rate getting more and more fine as we go up this list. Physical, we know. The etheric is actually part of our physical universe, but it is the part that isn't seen by most people with the physical eyes. Each one of these levels have 7 sub-levels. It's all a gradation. And we actually have a chart in our book here that gives a little better idea of the fact that it all, if you start with the known, the physical world, and go all the way up to the most spiritual that we can conceive of, it's completely a gradation. They're not like distinct steps, except that in a sense there are, because there's a point where the energy patterns make a distinct change. So that creates this sense, and so when we look at it that way, we do see kind of like distinct sections of it. But looked at from a different perspective, it looks absolutely just like a complete continuum with no break in it. The emotional plane or astral plane is where we still can feel these, but we can't see emotions. We give them colors. Red, he's red with anger, he's green with envy, white with anger, or white with pain, or whatever. So we do kind of associate certain colors with some of these emotions, If you're clairvoyant, you may be able to see actually a visual representation of that energy pattern, and it would have color and form to it. So emotional. Then next is the mental plane of consciousness. And we divide it into lower and higher levels of the mental plane. The lower being your concrete mind, what you usually use in school and reading a book, etc. It includes language, it includes words, it includes concepts that you can convey using words to other people. So that's why we call it concrete. The higher mental is a little different though. Here we get into the realm of abstract thought. These are thoughts that are not easily transmitted to another individual except at that level and telepathically. So you have to have two people who have developed some degree of consciousness at that level that would be able to communicate with each other. But here's another important thing. That is the level of the existence of the human soul. The true human, the real you, is not this personality that everyone else sees. It is your soul which exists at this higher and in the very highest sublevels of this higher mental plane. So we won't talk too much about the soul in this class, but that really is the true human being. This here is kind of like the rover that your higher self sent out to this foreign alien planet to gather information and to gain experience. To gain experience. At the end of your life, what's important? There's only one thing at the end of your life that's important. It's not the people you knew, it's not your relationships, it's not anything else. It's the experience you gained. You will not remember the names of the people that you knew. You will not remember specific events. All of that will be stripped away from you after you die. And what are you left with? The experience you gained. You being the higher, the soul, will send out a new rover at some point, a new incarnation, which is the newest version of the old one that wore out and was discarded. It sends out a new version, a new model, but it still is based on that previous experience. That previous experience partly brings over karma with it too. We don't get to just discard the results of our actions.
Right.
We unfortunately get to be responsible for them. We had a long discussion about whether this new personality, whether it's fair that this new personality should be responsible for the karma of the old personality, but you either have to, well, here, let's tell the story of the Chinese farmer.
Still the same energy.
It's still the same energy. Little farmer in I don't know, some country in Asia, up in the mountains, had this little tiny little farm, had one horse to work this farm, and his wife had died several years earlier, and his only son had left to go seek his fortune out in the world. So every afternoon after he finished his work, he and some of his neighbor friends would get together and chat and discuss things. So one day, they're sitting there chatting, and guy looks up, and there's someone coming up the path. And they're like, "Who is that?" And he looks and he says, "That's my son." He says, "My son came back." "Oh, what good fortune you have. Your son can now help you with the farm. You will be able to, you get more money, you'll be able to, this is wonderful, wonderful news." He said, "Maybe yes, maybe no. We'll see. Time will tell." So the next day, the son, who hasn't been working the farm very, very much for a long time, takes the horse out and, does some work, and then when he brings him back, he forgets to latch the gate. So during the night, the horse runs away. The neighbors all go, "Oh, that's terrible news. This is awful, bad karma that you have. Maybe yes, maybe no. We'll see. Time will tell. So, the next morning, he's looking out the window, and not only did the horse come back, but he brought 7 wild mares with him. So now he's got 8 horses. It's like, wow, this is great karma. You've got all these horses. All you have to do is break them, and you can sell them for big money. Wow, this is great. Maybe yes, maybe no. So the next day, his son is working to break one of these horses so that they can sell it. And instead, he gets bucked off and he breaks his arm. Oh, terrible news. This is awful karma you have. This is terrible. Now you have to feed him. He can't work on the farm. Oh, this is bad luck. Bad luck, man. Maybe yes, maybe no. The next day, the army is coming through the area, rounding up every single able-bodied young man to go fight the war. And they get to the farm and they say, well, we can't take him, he's got a broken arm. Oh, this is such good news. In 6 weeks it will be healed, and this is excellent, excellent karma. So the story, there's no end to the story. But you get the point. We don't see we always say something's good or something is bad. Oh, that's terrible. Even Shakespeare said there is nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so. It's your opinion. It's your thinking and your attitude towards it that determines if something is good or something is bad. So when something happens to me that most people say, oh, that's terrible, I think, there's got to be something good in this. I know something good will come out of this, and you know what? It always does. But you have to get far enough down the road that you can turn and look back and see it in perspective. And then it's all clear. It's like, wow. So that was the purpose in that episode of my life.
You could say, yeah, maybe yes,
So,
maybe no.
but we can learn. We can learn from other people. You don't have to make every single mistake yourself. Please realize that. Look at your family members. Look at your friends. Look at their lives, and especially people that you've known over a period of time, so that you can trace the results of their actions. I do that with my family and friends all the time. I look sometimes back 30, 40 years to see what caused the situation that they're experiencing right now, and in many cases I know exactly what caused it. But they may not agree with it, may not see it at all, but I can see it. And if you talk to them very gently about it, once in a while they will actually begin to change their way of looking at things. You have to be very careful. Just because you can see it clearly, you can't just, blurt out, well, here's your problem. You get angry all the time and it causes this. How dare you say that? And all you're doing there is intensifying it. So you have to be very careful.
They're not ready to take
No.
it. Maybe they're not ready to accept that at that point.
And there's a trick that I use, though, in dealing with people who are a little sensitive and won't see it in themselves. You point out the same fault in someone else that they know. You know so-and-so, have you ever noticed that? Oh, yeah, that, and they're absolutely, they can see that with no problem.
But it doesn't help. I mean, if it's projection, then they'll do it.
It's protection, and why is it protection
Or
of
change.
the ego? It's the ego that will, oh no, that doesn't exist in me.
So do you think that will work in the end? Because they'll keep projection.
Exactly.
Because
So
everyone
as
sees
long
it
as
themselves.
you insist on protecting your ego, you're in trouble. Because you can't see clearly. You've put on the blinders purposely, and you're going to continue to have problems. Eckhart, how many of you have read any of Eckhart Tolle's books?
Yeah, I read 2 of them.
Yeah. Excellent, excellent, excellent books.
Yeah.
If you read nothing else in life besides our book, read those 2 books by Eckhart Tolle. I mean, he's written more than 2, but the 2 main ones are The Power of Now, and even better was A New Earth.
Right.
A
The
New
purpose.
Earth. Paul and I taught a class on that book 4 years ago, and it had a major influence on the book that we wrote, a major influence. So read those books.
What's his name?
Eckhart Tolle, Tolle.
Yeah, the Power of Now is more of a condensed version. The New Earth is more of a expanded version of what he talks about in the Power of Now.
Yes, exactly. The Power of Now presents a very clear, concise concept, and then A New Earth touches on that, but then it presents a whole lot more, and it's much more about the ego and the importance of getting it under control and eventually eliminating it. Now, careful, we're not talking about eliminating your personality. We're talking about getting rid of your need to protect this ego. You don't need an ego. Well, you might. Okay. Most people still need the ego, and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. Without it, there wouldn't be much charity work in the world. How many of you have ever heard of the Anonymous Foundation of Charity? How many of you have heard of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation? Okay, well, guess what? They put millions and millions of dollars into this charitable organization, but they want their name on it. They want to get credit for it. That's from ego, and it was just the way it is. That's why I'm saying without ego, a lot of things wouldn't happen in the world. And in fact, very little would happen in most people's lives. It's their need for ego that propels them to learn new skills, to figure out how to make more money, to figure out how to get a relationship, etc., etc., etc. But in the more enlightened person, there comes a point when you realize the power of this ego and that it is controlling the real you. The enlightened person is becoming more in tune with their higher self, their soul, and they realize that this ego is not the be-all and end-all that they used to think it was, but now it's kind of like a ball and chain that's keeping you back from further progress. At some point, you really have to cut it loose and be rid of the ego. That doesn't mean that you don't have a personality. It doesn't mean you don't interact with people. It actually means that you have far more love and compassion, and your relationships are far more intense, far more fulfilling, and there's none of this emotional drama that most people are so addicted to. We won't get into that. It's all in the book.
That's a whole other lecture.
That's a whole other day on Oprah. So, finishing up, the soul is at the higher mental level. Above that is what is called the intuitional or Buddhic level. And a lot of people talk about, I got an intuition of such and such. What most people call intuition is really not true intuition, because otherwise it would be on a very high level of consciousness. What most of them get is a kind of a telepathic message, but it is almost always on the emotional level. And you even call it gut instinct, because where does it come? Right here. And this is the seat of the emotional or the astral part of your being, the solar plexus.
It's like a hunch.
Yes, a hunch, premonition, you're thinking, oh, I should call so-and-so, and just then the phone rings and it's so-and-so. That sort of thing. So it doesn't come from this, but when you're in deep, deep meditation, yes. Sometimes like solving not even solving a problem, because it doesn't pertain, it's generally more to universal concepts. Understanding more universal concepts would be on the level of the intuition. Anything that has to do with solving personal problems comes from this part of your consciousness. So, any questions about any of these levels of consciousness?
How come there's only 6?
Well,
Yeah, if it's supposed to be infinite.
well, and that's true. They actually occur in patterns of 7. Is that what you're getting at? Yes.
It looks like chakras to me.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Chakras, okay, yeah. Patterns of 7 occur in our universe, at least in our solar system. Everything, for the most part, occurs in patterns of 7, but then she's absolutely right, too, that it is infinite. Even when we get to, let's see, what do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But this is the one that is unnamed. So we do have 7 here. And there are different ways of delineating these. There are different methods. Different teachers use different annotations. But the point is to get the general concept of this rising of consciousness, and that in order to gain a higher level, you've got to let go of the lower at the same time. I kind of look at it as the trapeze artist or the gymnast who all the circuits, the rings, you know, where you've got someone going across this wide open space, and the rings are like.
You got the flyer and the catcher.
Well, but this is the one where you have to yourself catch the next ring. But at what point do you let go of that last one? If you hold on too long, then you get stuck. And if you don't, and if you release it too soon, you fall. So it has to be this kind of ballet of getting the momentum from the first ring, catching the other, and releasing that just at the right time so you don't lose that momentum and you have enough to go on to the third ring. It's a little tricky. So it's the same thing in life. And people struggle with that. They start making some progress spiritually, but they're not ready to let go, or they let go too soon and they haven't made enough progress, and so they kind of fall and get stunned because they're like, what happened here? I've let go of my previous way of doing things and I'm not quite there, and you get stuck in the middle sometimes. So it has to be very coordinated as to at what point you let go of things that no longer serve you. It's the only way you can move forward, though. Otherwise, you're stuck. You're hanging on your ring, and that's where you are for the rest of this lifetime. And for most people, that's exactly what happens. They're perfectly happy just having something to hang on to. What's that?
Just hanging around.
Just hanging around. Yeah, absolutely.
Is there a problem?
But no, it's not a problem whatsoever. And I want to be clear on that. No one has to go any faster than they feel like doing. And the vast majority of people will go with the normal average current of the river. Problem is they don't go with the flow. They try to swim upstream, or they try to swim across the current, and then they wonder why they get beat up by these logs coming down. If they would just get on the log and ride it, it would be fine. But instead, they've got to try to go against the flow, and that's where the pain and suffering comes in.
Do you know what Jim Hightower says? He says, go upstream, even a dead fish can go downstream.
All right. And I say the opposite. I say go with the flow, but instead of just waiting for the current, swim faster. Because we need the avant-garde. We need the scouts that are willing to go out ahead of the average humanity and figure out these things and then show others how to do it. We need some teachers. We're in desperate need of teachers of humanity at this stage of our human evolution. And it is crucial right now. We have made a certain degree of advancement in human evolutionary evolution of human consciousness, but we have millions of people who are right on the verge of taking a great jump in consciousness, but we don't have enough people to show them exactly how to do it. The concepts are there, the idea that it's possible is there, but we need some concrete, practical methods of making that happen. That's one of the goals of the hierarchy right now, is to get some recruits to fill in some of those missing positions, teaching positions. Lots of students and potential students. We don't have enough teachers right now. If any of you are willing to make the effort, then that would be a noble undertaking. But I warn you, It is not easy. It is not easy. I'll read from the beginning of the book a quotation from H.P. Blavatsky, where she talks about this, and she says, "There is a road steep and thorny, beset with perils of every kind, but yet a road, and it leads to the very heart of the universe. I can tell you how to find those who will show you the secret gateway that opens inward only and closes fast behind the neophyte forevermore. There is no danger that dauntless courage cannot conquer. There is no trial that spotless purity cannot pass through. There is no difficulty that strong intellect cannot surmount. For those who win onwards, there is reward past all telling, the power to bless and save humanity. For those who fail, there are other lives in which success may come." If you choose to undertake that, and I urge you to spend a few years, not just a few weeks in contemplation, but a few years before you even offer yourself as one of these people who are willing to go ahead. It is arduous, absolutely arduous, and only for those people who have dauntless courage, spotless purity, and strong intellect. So if you haven't developed those three characteristics to a pretty high degree, work on those first before you even undertake anything else, because there are far more people who fail than those who succeed. It's staggering. The percentage of people who fail is enormous.
What the failure looks like.
What does it look like? Well, it looks like once you offer yourself to be tested as to, it's kind of like basic training. Anyone who seriously offers to do that is given a chance, and it comes about in the form of trials. She talks about there are no trials that spotless purity cannot pass through. And these trials are entirely psychological. They can happen during dreams. They can happen in everyday events, but it's your psychological reaction or attitude towards these events. And some of them are very difficult ones. And then you're graded basically on how you perform. So failure means that you didn't pass. And you will not be given a second chance normally for a period of time, usually 20, 25 years, and maybe another lifetime. It's not like you can go back every week like the bar exam and try it again, because it requires an effort on the part of the hierarchy too, to even give somebody a chance. So they won't give you a chance every 6 months to try it again. No, if you offer yourself and you fail, then there's a period of time where you have to actually do work on your own, and it's a number of years before you get another chance to do that. So good question. That's exactly what that means.
So I have a question for you. So with this in mind, how does one, with this knowledge of like time's not real and is somewhat irrelevant,
good.
how do you exist in a world where time is supposed to be, where time is real and is important to everybody else?
Well, Eckhart Tolle talks about this very thing. And he says you have to have a dual concept of time. You have to realize yourself that there is no such thing as time. And yet we have to act as if time existed. How did people in olden days make an appointment with someone else? You couldn't say, well, I'll meet you at 4 o'clock on Thursday at the corner barber shop. Well, no, but what you could say is, I will meet you when the sun is at such and such a position on the second day after the next full moon. And that's exactly what they did. Even for a year or more in advance, they would make appointments based on these positions by the moon and the sun. So by the positions of these two celestial bodies is how they would make appointments. In the up until the advent of the train, every community had its own local time. So the time in Portland was not the same time as the time in Los Angeles, was not the same time as in Las Vegas. Right now, they're all, you set your watch in Las Vegas and it doesn't change, right? Well, in those days, it depended on when the sun was exactly overhead, that was 12 noon. Well, that didn't work very well when the trains came along, because how did you make schedules? It created chaos. So they finally went to creating time zones, and that's how they solved that problem. But that's still artificial, isn't it? Still artificial.
In Arabic, there are no tenses.
There are no, oh, okay.
No past, present, or future. I don't know how they compensate for that, but
I know in other languages too, they don't have tenses, but they say, for example, today you would say, I washed the car. So they would say, I washed the car yesterday. They have some other word that indicates it, but it's not in the verb tense. There's no I did it, it's I do it. It was yesterday. I do it. I do it yesterday.
yes.
So yeah, that's an interesting point. So yes, how do we? Let's continue a little bit about this idea of non-existence of time. There is in yoga philosophy, and when I say yoga philosophy, I'm talking about Raja Yoga. How many of you have heard of the aphorisms of Patanjali? The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. This is really the basis of all yoga philosophy, is that one book. And if you have only the aphorisms themselves, they would take up 10 pages in a printed book. They're very short, very concise, but it's almost always the author includes a commentary, the current author, because these were written hundreds of years ago. Nobody knows exactly when. But there's always a commentary that goes with it, and some are better than others. There are numerous commentaries on this book, but it's an excellent book. It is pure Eastern philosophy of all of this. Not all of the details, but from a practical point of view, because it teaches you how to gain contact with the true self, the higher part of your being, which is your soul. I call it the soul, through meditation. And it turns out that what most of us call meditation is really only the very beginning of the real process. It is a process that covers several lifetimes of very strenuous effort. So if you make some progress in this lifetime, in 2 or 3 lifetimes from now, you may actually reach a level of samadhi. And even in samadhi, there are 7 different stages of samadhi. They start at the lower mental and go up beyond the intuition. So even then, it takes a long time to reach that point where you are in true meditation. But the more effort you make, the better you get at it. And it takes a long time. Don't let anybody tell you they can teach you meditation in 6 easy lessons. Maybe 6 lifetimes of hard work, yes, but not 6 easy lessons. We can do the beginning at least. Concentration is the first part. If we can learn good concentration, we're doing well in this lifetime. We sit and we call it meditation, but it's really pretty much quiet time. And if you learn to really concentrate on something, we're going to do an exercise later. We'll see. You'll see. Well, you'll see. All right. But according to yoga philosophy, there is a unit of time called a kshana. I'm sure you all know how to spell it, but I'll write it in.
Oh, yeah.
All right, kshana. So in yoga philosophy, it's kind of like photons. You know, scientists talk about photons sometimes, but even that's in dispute as to whether they even exist. Do you talk about them as packets of light, or do you talk about them as little bursts of energy? In a way, it doesn't matter. It's however you choose to perceive it. Well, time is the same way. It doesn't occur as this smooth running linear thing that everyone thinks of. So they say that there is a unit of time, and in philosophy, yoga philosophy, it's called a kshana. Is it 1/4,000th of a nanosecond? No one will even touch that. We don't know. But here's the thing, and they explain it. Just like a movie. You watch a movie and it looks absolutely like it's continuous, right? It's not. You know that. It's an illusion, isn't it? What is it, 16 frames a second or something? I don't know, whatever it is. But they are still images. And in the old days, of course, we used to watch the wheels of the stagecoaches go backwards as the stagecoach is going forward, until they figured out that you couldn't put spokes. You had to use a solid surface so that it looked like it was actually going forward too. All an illusion, but we're absolutely convinced as children that it's real and that it's moving forward. Time is the same way. There is no such thing as this continuum of time. There's no past, present, and future on a line, and this is being the present and it moves along this continuous line. It doesn't work that way. Sorry to burst your bubble, but it doesn't work that way. It doesn't. And when we wrap our heads around that, it actually begins to make sense. Let me read you what one of these adept teachers said about time. Very concise and very accurate. And he says, if I can find it, that time is the sequence of the stages of consciousness as registered in the human brain. So it's a sequence of stages of consciousness registered in the human brain, not even in the mind, but in the human brain. It is therefore a physical event. So we make a distinction between mind and the brain, because after you die, you don't have a brain anymore. It's part of your physical body, but you still have a mind. The mind and the brain are two different things, and mind exists at all levels. There is a cosmic mind, there is a universal mind, there is mind activity at all of these levels. So what we think of as the epitome of human consciousness as being our most brilliant thinkers in the human kingdom, you ain't seen nothing yet. When you get to a much higher level, this is infinitesimally smaller in consciousness than what beings that have done the work in previous existences, have achieved. It's infinitesimal, what we have here. So we have no reason to take great pride in our minds, because there are beings that are way ahead of us. We do it because we're the top dogs on the planet.
So we think we are.
We think we are. At least physically, we don't see anyone else. I don't see anyone out claiming to be bigger and badder than I am, so I get to be it.
It feeds our ego.
What's that?
Feeds our
It
ego.
feeds our ego. It's exactly right. It's exactly right. So, is there a past? Let's talk about memories. Because people say, well, I have very distinct memories, so there's got to be a past.
They also have memories of the future, so there's got to be what's in the memory as well. So the future, that's all right.
I remember tomorrow.
Wait, which comedy club do you work at?
Theosophical society.
Good, that's there you go. Is there such a thing as memory? Is there such a thing as memory? How many of you have ever compared memories of childhood with some of your siblings? You said, remember when mom and dad did such and such? And how many times did they say, no, they didn't? What are you talking about? And the more you talk about it, the more you realize that you had different set of parents from them.
I have a sister who remembers stuff that happened to the rest of us before she was born. Swears it happened to her, but it didn't.
Sometimes it can be child and parent.
Yes.
So the parent, something stood out to a child,
Mhm.
and the parent doesn't remember it at all.
Exactly. Exactly.
It happened, but different perspective or perception of the
The event.
Mhm. So when you really start to analyze this and really delve into it, something comes clear, and that is, yes, events happen. Every single person interprets it differently. So what is the point? Your reality is only from your point of view, no one else's. You live in a universe of one person. And you are the star in your movie. Everybody else is a bit
Extra.
An extra. Exactly. And it
Well,
all
my movie all.
it all revolves around you, doesn't it?
She wants to be paid.
What's the going rate for extras? I think it's $1 an hour.
Not much. Minimum
Not much.
wage.
So, but that is absolutely true. You created your perception of reality based on previous experience and the current situation and your interaction, your interpretation of it. So there are all these filters. A being who is way above all of this would see it very differently. If there are no filters involved, they would see it at least much more accurately than we.
Is it possible that we also bring previous life experiences, a bit of that through, and our reactions?
Oh, of course you do. Of
Yeah.
course you do. When you are born in this physical incarnation, you don't come in as a clean slate. I'm sorry again to burst your bubble, but
No,
you're
something's
not.
already adversity.
I was
You may
thinking to
look
begin with.
innocent. You may look like an innocent baby, but you come with baggage. You come with baggage. Some with a great big
Bags.
luggage, steamer trunks of baggage. And you know, if it's a family member, if it's your own child, you take what you get because it's part of your karma too. It's part of the karma you came into life with, is the karma that they're dragging in with them, and it's all intermingled.
Yeah.
So what do? We have to deal with it.
We have to find, well, I don't know, for me, I find ways that, just kind of like, okay, I'm going to try and separate myself from that. I mean, you can't, they are your family, but you don't have to be part of that kind of thinking. I mean, I think for me, I'm different than my family. My mother and I were totally separate from our family, but they're still our family, but they're still stuck in that, like you say, that shell, and they don't want to expand out of the shell. But yeah, I'm a person who, okay, I don't want to be stuck there. I don't want to be there. I want to be somewhere else. But I can't, trying to associate with them, you get kind of.
Yeah, we have to walk a fine line. You cannot run away from karma, no matter how hard you try. You cannot run away from it. It's like people who try to run away from themselves. I don't like myself, so I'm going to move to Washington. Well, guess where? guess what? Wherever you go, there you are. And how many people think that by moving somewhere else or getting into a different relationship, all of a sudden things are going to be different? Well, unfortunately, you brought yourself with you, so how do you expect it to be different? You brought all of your expectations, all of your weaknesses with you, so nothing changes. So you have to be very cognizant of other people. They move at their own rate. If you're moving a little bit faster, that's fine, but you have to leave them alone in their own way of doing things.
But sometimes too, I think we may end up being a mentor.
Yes,
for the
exactly.
others.
I was telling people before, I grew up in the Mormon church and was a missionary, and our family was third, fourth generation Mormons, walked across the plains, the whole thing. I have books of ancestors in my library. But I walked away from all of that because it didn't mean anything to me. So my family tried for 25 years to get me to come back, saying, you need to come back to where you belong. And I'm like, no, I'm right where I belong. Well, they finally came to terms with it. It took them a long, long time. But guess what? Even the ones who are still devout Mormons, guess who they turn to when they have difficulties and need some spiritual advice?
Yeah.
Exactly. And they are beginning to realize that I actually have learned some things that are useful. And they recognize it. And it took them a while to admit it, but they do come around. So you have to be just exquisitely patient with people.
Right, and that's what I learned too, is just
Accept
accept
it.
it.
Just accept the way they are.
And move on.
We're always trying to change people to fit our perception. Even Paul used to do this.
But, excuse me, it's my universe, I want
Oh,
to my way.
Exactly. And since I know him, he won't mind if I tell you.
Oh, okay.
He was always worried about his father's weight because he would try to lose weight. He really would do everything possible to try to help him, and sometimes his father would go along with it. Sometimes he didn't. Finally, I said, just leave it alone. Just be okay. Just love him the way he is. And it took him a little while to come to terms with that, but he finally realized, you know what, that's absolutely true. So whether you tell the person or whether you just think it in your mind, you just say, I love you just the way you are. You don't say, but I wish you would lose weight, or I wish you would do this, or become this.
No buts.
No buts. There are no buts. It's just unconditional. That is the definition. I love you, period.
Right.
That's it. That's it. That's real love, when there are no conditions whatsoever. So yeah, we have to, even if you're making a little more rapid progress, be exquisitely patient with everyone, and be exquisitely patient with other students. They still have egos too, and you probably do too. I certainly do. Every time I think I've just about got to the end of my ego, something else pops up. I ain't there yet. So,
But I
be
think-
patient with people.
I think a lot of it is just like acknowledging, being aware of yourself, and like knowing, okay, well, maybe that's a little bit of a control issue, because we're always trying to control people, or we're trying
Yes.
to control things, and we can't, and accepting the fact that you can't control anything,
Mm-hmm.
and just being aware of yourself and what's going on with yourself.
Yes.
Like say, oh, okay, well, I'm trying to control, that's control.
Well, and you see that in other people. Maybe we don't see it in ourselves, but what do other people do? Their lives are so messed up that they're out of control. So what do? They try to fix somebody. Oh, let me show you how to fix your life. Oh, let me fix your life for you. And their life is just a shambles, but they don't want to look at that or admit it, so they're trying to fix other people's lives. It's a diversion tactic. It doesn't work. And the people you're trying to help look at you and they're like, why are you trying to fix my life? Your life is a mess.
Yeah.
So, as the airline personnel are great spiritual teachers. You knew that, right? Every time you get on a plane, they remind you of a very important spiritual lesson. Save yourself before you try to save someone else. Put your own mask on. Make sure that you have saved yourself before you go around trying to help other people save themselves.
Oh, I was just going to ask, are you equating the ego with the personality then?
Yes, and yes, good point. Because in Theosophical books, they used for many years the term ego with a capital E sometimes, and pronouncing it ego and different things. But it has all pretty much failed because of modern psychology. We're just stuck. So that's why in some of the other Theosophical books, you'll see the term ego used as the higher self, what I call the soul. So what I use the term ego is strictly in the term of psychology of my personal needs, and usually emotional needs. My sense of who I am.
The little kid, the brat.
Yeah, exactly.
Persona.
Yes. Animals and plants have no conception of time. Did you know that?
Excuse me?
Do you know any of them check
They're going with
They-
the sun's up and the sun's down, the sun's up and the sun's down.
Exactly.
They have
So what
concept
does-
of change, but not time.
Exactly. So what does the sunflower do? It follows the sun. And if the sun doesn't come up, what does it do? It does nothing.
Sits there.
It sits there.
It waits
If
till the next morning.
Exactly. If it's cloudy, it doesn't know where the sun is, so it just sits there. But as soon as it finds the sun again, it reorients itself. So that's plants and flowers operate by instinct. They don't plan in the future. Even if you see ants storing away food, it's by instinct. This is by eons of experience of their kingdom. Tells some things, the collective consciousness of their kingdom, that's how they have to do things in order to survive. They just follow the pattern. We humans create all kinds of havoc because we have options. It's called the human mind.
We have the dangerous thing called thinking.
And it's also called free will. Well,
Just a quick time check, it's 4:20.
4:20? Where did the time go?
Because
Well, we have no time, so there is
Right?
What time is it? Now!
Yeah.
Exactly.
Now,
Good.
in this moment in time now,
And at this time in illusionary time.
okay?
That clock says.
So this is important to point out. Remember the quote? The teacher said it is a, what did he say?
A lot of things.
It is a physical event, and it takes place in the human brain. The human brain. He pointed out specifically. So the rest of nature doesn't recognize this concept of time like humans do. We pretty much invented it. It's one more of our inventions that kind of serves and kind of doesn't. So did the past actually happen? I say it didn't. We say, well, I have memories. How good are those memories? We found out that they're not very good. Let's see how good our powers of observation are. Well, no, let's do a different exercise. Paul, you're going to explain how to do it. I'm going to pass out your tools.
This is a fun exercise we're going to do. It's actually in our book, so you can repeat it anytime you choose. But
Okay.
we're going to practice ultra slow motion. And it's something that humans, especially in this day and age and in our society, don't ever do. We're usually in ultra fast motion. So,
Choose one
actually,
that speaks to me.
let me.
I think what's speaking
Okay, we're each going to have a stone like this. And it's going to be a very, very simple
Go ahead.
movement that we're going to do with the stone. We're going to sit very quietly, almost in a state of meditation, but with our eyes open, or closed, it's your choice. And we're going to hold it in one of our hands, and we're going to make the motion of this, except a lot slower. So we'll start off with the rock in our hand, move it to our forehead, and then back down, except this could take
Or never.
5 minutes. So ultra slow motion. So just
Even
some
slower.
some people may take 3 minutes, some 7 minutes, 1 minute, and just observe the process of going as slow as you possibly can, but with keeping the movement going. So start at the hand,
Lift
to the forehead,
until everyone's got.
back down, and then, yeah, I know we're not quite done yet.
Why, and what are we going to get out of this?
We'll just experience it first, and then we'll talk about it afterwards. I know it's different, and it's uncomfortable.
And do we have enough time?
See what our brains do when we try to shake it up a little bit? This is exactly part of the point. This is part of the whole lesson.
Just being silly.
Terry said earlier that he wants to shake the foundations, and that's exactly it. We're weird here, so just. Well, let's not start just yet. Let's wait till everyone. We need to do this quietly because it's not something that we're talking about, or we want to be focused on it.
So this is actually a form of meditation. And like you said, do it just as slowly as you can and with complete intention. And this is only your experience.
So we can start this.
wants to share their experience?
Interesting. It ended up being like a movie.
Uh,
Step, 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 step.
Anybody else notice that?
Yeah.
That you can't really do it as a it's,
Right.
It's not smooth.
it's almost like a clock ticking, isn't it?
Yeah.
And what is it? Clock ticking? Time. But it doesn't go like this. It goes. You can even hear it.
I kind of felt it in my body. I just let my body go move and it wanted to. And then
Yeah.
just let it tick, tick.
Okay.
And we're so accustomed to rhythm from
Yes.
our heart.
Yes.
There's a rhythm to most parts of our lives. I think that
Mhm.
that-
As soon as I was aware of it moving up, I forgot what had happened just before. So I was only aware of him moving, but I no longer remembered exactly what had happened the second before.
So how many of you were paying attention to the passage of time? You can't, can you? Because why? Because you were in the now. You were being present. It's called being present. That was all that existed for you for a period. Was that object, that little object, was your universe. There was no other. Were you worried about the cars outside or anything else?
No.
We did the same thing in Cleveland, and afterwards somebody said, "Oh yeah, I would." And then somebody, so-and-so's cell phone rang, and I said, "A cell phone rang? I didn't hear it. I honestly didn't hear a cell phone ring." And yet somebody's cell phone went off during the experiment. And one lady said, "Oh, I don't think I can do this." And I said, "Well, just try it." So at the end, she only had it about 2 inches from her palm, and I said, "Well, see, you almost got all the way back down." She says, "No, that's as high as I ever got it." She was so intent on it that was as far as she moved it in 10 minutes.
Well, I got to the point where it didn't matter if I moved it or not.
Mhm.
I could feel my whole body just kind of relaxing and, just being there. So I had, and then when you said, "I'll give you a few moments to get to the end," I thought, but I don't want to speed up.
Right.
And it doesn't matter.
No, it's fine.
It's exactly, because wherever you are, that's it. There's nothing else. There's no past, there's no future.
I had a very strange experience. I didn't move it at all.
You
rod
didn't move the
was
rock,
right
you moved your
here.
consciousness, right?
But I did not move it, and it was right there the whole time.
Well, okay.
I didn't feel that tick, tick, tick at
No?
all. It did feel
Oh, really?
continuous.
Okay, that's unusual, because most people notice this
No.
kind of progression.
I've been intrigued for a long time now about plants, because you can look at a plant in the morning or, one day, and it's here, and if it's got a flower, the bud's closed, and later in the day it's open, or it has, maybe in a little bit of time it's grown a few inches, and you look at that and you think, I never saw it move. But it did.
Yes, of
It
course.
had to, and if you watch time-lapse photography, you could see, they
Yes.
look quite aggressive.
And sometimes they actually turn it into a sound visual. You hear it growing.
Yes, but as I was doing the run, that came into my head, and I thought, oh, I'm a plant.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
what the plant feels like.
Yeah, exactly. So how many of you were aware more of energy than of anything physical or material? Yeah. You see what happens when you are in the present? Most people are not in the present. Where are they? Either in the past or in the future.
Or
Both
both
are
of us.
illusions, so it's very dangerous because you're in some place that doesn't exist. This at least is real. This moment is real, and it's actually the only one that is. And once it's gone, it's gone. It's not real anymore. It's now an illusion also, and is part of your concept of memory, but it's not accurate. Your ability to remember anything is very suspect. I won't tell you the whole story, but I'll give you very quickly the story of a man who spent 11 years in prison for a rape that he didn't commit, because the woman, who was a college student, was absolutely convinced from identifying him in a lineup, this was the man who spent an hour in her apartment, for whom she actually made a sandwich, and she did everything possible to memorize all the physical characteristics so that she could identify him, because she was going to nail this guy. And she picked the wrong one. And this guy spent 11 years in prison, and he actually was given a second chance because someone else in prison, it turned out, looked very similar to him and admitted the crime. But then when they got him on the witness stand, he denied it again. And the victim was incensed that her testimony was being questioned. He said, I did not make a mistake the first time, and I'm not making a mistake now. It was this man. And there's a book about it. It's called Picking Cotton. The guy's name was Ron Cotton, who was unjustly accused of rape and spent 11 years in prison. It was only because of DNA testing that was just coming out that he asked his attorneys, can this be done? And they checked and they said, yes, it sure can. Turned out that the guy who had admitted it, who had died in the meantime, was the rapist. He was innocent. And when this woman finally wrapped around her head around the fact that she had misidentified the real rapist, she was beside herself. It took her a long time to even come to terms with it. And she finally said, I've got to talk to this man. I don't care if he gets angry at me. I've got to talk to him. So she arranged to meet him at a church. And her husband, she was married at the time, waited outside, and they talked for like 2 hours. And this was a white woman in the South and an African American man.
Oh.
So there's more to it. So after talking for 2 hours, he was not angry. He just said, I just never could understand why you were so adamant that you had the right person. And she didn't really have an answer, but they talked and talked and talked for quite a while. At the end, they hugged each other and actually became friends. He was married, and by the time she got up the courage to go meet him. And so their families would actually get together periodically and have a picnic together. And they went out on to do seminars for police departments to teach them how careful they had to be about witnesses. People who were absolutely convinced that their memory was accurate. But it's not. We need to just accept that. No one of us has really accurate memories. So, do we need to dwell on the past? Do we need to hang on to these feelings of having been wronged by somebody else? It serves absolutely no purpose whatsoever.
No, because you're not gonna, it's done, it's over.
And it wasn't accurate anyway. Whatever you feel, whatever you remember or think you remember was not accurate. And guess what? Every time you dredge that back up and review it in your mind, you don't make it more accurate, you make it less accurate. Because you're farther removed from the event, and what you're doing is reinforcing all of these things that you've already added to it. Your perceptions of it, you're just reinforcing it. So it's getting farther and farther from reality, not closer. Let go of it. Just, if you have upsets with family members or with former partners or whatever, even if they are not willing to let go of it, you let go of it. Their karma is their own karma, and they will come to terms maybe not until they die. until that memory is taken away from them. That's just it. At the end of life, everyone's memories are going to disappear.
Because it's just the experience that we're going to take with us.
It's the experience. That experience can never be taken away from you, but the memory can, of events.
Because we can't have the memories and come back and relearn an experience or learn a new
And this
experience.
is the beauty of life. If we remembered everything that happened in past lives, we would get nowhere.
Right.
You would say, oh, remember 3,000 years ago you murdered me.
You stole my husband!
Yeah, exactly. But life gives us a chance for a clean break. It says, okay, you can keep your experience, but the memories, you have to just let those go. Why don't we let them go now? Is there any reason not to? I don't see any reason. All right, quickly, what about the future? We've decided there's no past. Is there a future?
Doubtful.
Possibly.
But what is the future? It is your expectations, your hopes, or your fears. So you're projecting something into the future, and that's what you're
gonna get.
thinking is going to happen. It never happens exactly the way you think it's going to. So if you have any anxiety or worry or fear about it, it serves absolutely no purpose whatsoever. How many times did I get just so worked up over something that I knew I was going to have to encounter in the future, and once I finally got to the point where that it had to be settled, it was like, oh, okay, no problem. And that's the end of it. It's like, oh my God, why did I anguish about that for
You
days?
mean that meeting next week?
Yes, that one. And how many of you do that? You know, you have a speaking engagement, or you have something, a project you have to do, and you just anguish about it.
Yeah. Like,
So how much good does that do? None whatsoever.
So
Either
should-
do the work or put it off,
I
either
found-
way.
I found a book at my friend's house, and it's just the title of the book that kind of hit me. It's called "Do It Anyway, Even If You're Depressed." So it was just the title that hit me. And so, like, when I had that title, and I read it every day because it's right. I haven't read the book. I just read the title. I was like,
good.
oh, it reminded me to do something.
Well.
If you're depressed, do something.
Mhm.
Just do something. You know. So.
Exactly, and that's the very best solution to depression. What do most people do? They go to the doctor and give me a pill to cure this.
Yeah.
A doctor cannot give you a pill to cure depression or any other illness that was caused by your emotions and your reactions. If you caused it by your mental processes, then you can only cure it through the same way, your mental process. You've got to review it, figure out what caused it, accept responsibility for it, and move, and then talk through it to the point where you're really able to release it. Honestly able, you're finished with it, you're done. And you just let go of it and it dissipates. But it has to get to that point. You can't claim that you let it go when you really didn't, because then it just gets stuffed back again.
The mind creates an image, and the image is not real
Yes.
of the past or the future.
We create our own reality by our thoughts and our emotions. That is our reality. It is real. But it's our own. It's our own creation. We made it. We can unmake it too. And we can remake it in a much more beautiful format if you choose to. So why not go that direction? So the point is, let go of the past. If you want to keep a few photos and look at them, fine. But I don't even look at photos anymore. It's like, you know what?
Really, yeah.
It doesn't. I would rather just think of not even events or that sort of thing, but this connection, the energy
The
patterns,
experience.
the interpersonal connection of loving, compassion, friendship, whatever your personal relationship with this person. Dwell on that. And the future, why worry about it? It'll be what it'll be, and is it good or is it bad? Who knows? I do know this. Once you get your consciousness raised to a high enough level, everything's absolutely, exquisitely perfect. Exquisitely, there's no imbalance whatsoever. Perfectly balanced. You have to take into account karma to create that balance. So, but at that level, time doesn't exist. Remember, it's only a physical phenomenon. On any of these other levels of consciousness, there is no concept of time. So if you are out of incarnation for 12,000 years before your next incarnation, you'll come back and there will be no sense that you missed anything at all. You're not going to say, oh my gosh, I slept for 12,000 years. It's just like, you wake up like any other baby, you know, it's like, whoa, where'd that come from? What's this? Oh, a new universe. So I hope you have some ideas. I hope this gives you a little bit to kind of chew on and contemplate. Are there any last minute things that weren't answered? I think we covered things pretty well. Yeah.
The Greeks have two words for time. One is chronos, from which you get the word chronological, and they also have kairos, kappa, alpha, iota, Roma, omicron, sigma. What's the difference between those two?
I'm not familiar, so unfortunately I can't.
Chronos would refer to chronological time.
Right, exactly, and all of our chronometers, and that all comes from that. But I'm unfortunately not familiar enough with Greek terms to know that. But I'll look it up though.
It can be a group discussion.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much for your attention. I hope everyone had a
Thank you.
good time.